Hey, welcome back, Programming 11. We're gonna make some enemies. We got a bullet going on. We got, firepower, but there's nothing to shoot at. I'll just mention I did change the game a little bit. It looks a little bit different. I just added in some colors. And I got a little bit of a streaky effect going on. So, I've just visited Coolers, got myself a color palette here, and I invite you to do the same. I don't know. I was just feeling a little down on my lame colors. That's not a big deal, but if you feel the same, go and it was an enjoyable little break to do that. Also, to make it kind of streaky, I removed my background and I replaced it with something like this, where it's like a color, and this is a transparency, and I'm basically painting over the last frame with a somewhat transparent rectangle. And if you do that, then it takes a few frames for you to clear away, and the previous frames kind of will have to fade as each transparent rectangle gets drawn on top of it and slowly erases it. So you kind of create that fade effect. You can make it really dramatic if you like have a very transparent rectangle, but I think that looks just insane. Like I'm not sure if it looks cool, but I'm not sure if you could play this game. But that's what we're doing. It's kind of great. I don't know. Maybe it is worth it. So you can change that. If you make it too high, then it doesn't really show up at all. Like it gets immediately erased. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it at this. I don't know. It's good enough. Makes me feel happy. So what we're really gonna do today, this video anyways, is gonna be making an enemy. So I'm gonna make a new tab called enemy. Now we're gonna have a variety of enemies, so you can decide what to call it. I'm just gonna call this one enemy, and then you're gonna get a chance to kind of build your own enemies. So I'm gonna make a class called class enemy. And it is going to extend a game object, and that is now essential. It's not just a convenient. Extends with an S. It's not just convenient. It's important because our game requires it. Oh, I see it's got a problem. Implicit. Oh yeah. So I just have to get my constructor going on. I don't think I need any new variables just yet, so I'm going to just go ahead and make my enemy constructor. And as you know, our constructors now just call the game objects constructor. So we just have to remember the order, and it's x, y, width, height. So when we, x, y, vx, vy, size, color, lives. Okay, there we go. So we'll just make a basic target enemy. So it's x will probably be random, but anywhere from 0 to height. Width. And then it's y. I think I'll make them just start at the top of the screen, so y will be 0. And then vx will probably be 0, and vy will probably be just a like 5 or something, just some number. We'll just pick a number. Size will probably be about the same as we are. I think it's 40. Color will be, I think yellow is the color I chose, but you can make it whatever you like. And then the last one is lives. So this will be like how many hits it can take. So we'll just say 1 life for now. Okay, so we're good to go. So that makes our constructor. It doesn't really have to do much for the act function yet. We just need to. It doesn't need to do anything for the show function either. It's pretty much, we got an enemy. We're just gonna use the default sort of act and show function that we get from game object. Move and draw a square. Okay, so I will put in some kind of piece of code, maybe inside of the game, that just to sort of create, just like we create new stars, we'll just make new enemies. I don't want to make one every frame, but I think I'll just do it for now. It looks very goofy, but just to test it, we'll just see if we get a cascade of yellow squares coming down. Oh yes, oh my. Yeah, okay, I'm in. This seems like a fair game. Notice that they sort of pop when they appear, like poof. If you don't like that, easy fix. In our enemy, we don't have to start them at 0. We could start them at -20, and that'll be off screen, or half width, or half height. There we go. Now they look like they're just appearing. Okay, wow. So many enemies. Well, at least there'll be lots to shoot, so that'll be good. when I test my collision code. Okay, so now where do we put our collision code? We want bullets to hit enemies. So we're probably going to just make our act function partially overridden. So I'm going to start void act, and I still want the movement code. So I'm going to say super.act. So it's still doing all the things other game objects do. But now let's check for collisions. So collisions, how are we going to do that? So collisions, we have to check for, because there could be more than one bullet on the screen, right? There could be many bullets on the screen. So we need to loop through our objects and find all the bullets and then check to see if they're colliding with us. And every single enemy is going to do that on the screen. They're all going to check for it. Woo! That sounds hard. Yeah, this is probably one of the hardest things we've done so far in the project. Just like all the new stuff is hard. Pardon me as I stretch. But also, like, now we have this complicated problem. So what we need to do is we need to search our objects list. So I'll remind you about our objects list. As the enemy flies through the screen while it's alive, is going to be checking to see, oh, hey, is any of the bullets, it's going to search through all of objects and be like, is there a bullet here? And by the way, is that bullet colliding with us? So it needs to process the list. So it's going to have a loop that's quite similar to our game engine. So each enemy will have this code inside of it where it is looking through the array list, looking for bullets. So, that's a pretty classic loop. I think we could do it right now. We could say int I equals 0. This is our collision code, by the way. I'll write that right here. So I'm going to move this down, and I'll say, while I is less than objects dot size, I will do a thing, and then I'll I++. This is our classic sort of structure. I missed a parenthesis. This is our classic structure, right? Start on page 1, go to the end. When we're done, whatever we're doing with the current one, go to the next one. Okay, so here's the story. So what we need to do is we need to get the object. So I'll say, I'll make a game object variable, call it obj, and then I'll just say objects.get I. And what I'll do now is I'll check to see if it's a bullet. So there could be many different things in our screen, right? It could be an enemy, it could be a star, it could be, many different things. So what I want to do is just check to see if there's a bullet. So I'll say, hey, if obj is an instance of the bullet class. So instance of basically checks the class of our object. And again, it might be a star, so it might not work. But if it finds a bullet, then it's going to find out, are we colliding? And hey, the collision code's pretty nice. The collision code is basically going to be just looking at the distance between the two objects, the enemy and the bullet, and seeing if the distance is less than the sum of their radii. Now there's squares, so you could do a square-based collision, but I'm just going to do the old circle stuff. So we already know how to do that. Now this is going to get kind of messy because we got an if, and then there's going to be some more ifs inside. So yeah, it's kind of ugly. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be a big if statement. I'm not sure if I'm super happy with that. So what I might do is make a function for this, and if that works, I think that'll be nice. So I might just say, if it's an object, then check collision or something. Collision. And I might send it the object to check it. So a check collision. Now, I think a lot of things might need to check collisions. So maybe what we can do is write this code in the game object class, and then all the other things can check to see if they're colliding with a particular object. It doesn't always have to be a bullet, so it can be any game object. So what I'm going to do is write this function in game object, and then my starfighter can check for collisions, and anyone can check for collisions. And then maybe I need to say like return true or something like that. Maybe I make this a Boolean function. So maybe I could say something like if colliding with a particular object, then we could go from here. I think that'll work out pretty nicely. So colliding with doesn't exist, so we'll have to go write that. So we check to see if it's a bullet, and then we check to see if we're colliding with it, and if we are, we do something. So colliding with, that's a nice function, right? So let's go to GameObject, and if I build it in GameObject, then every single class that's built on this, that is a subclass of GameObject, that is built on that foundation, that extends GameObject, all those classes will get it too. So I'll make a Boolean function called colliding with, and it'll take any kind of GameObject as a parameter. And what we can do is we can say, oh, it didn't like that. Oh yeah, we just have to return something. It's not quite ready. So what I can do is I can say if the distance, so that's just this function, sorry, the distance between the object, which is object.x, object.y, and this thing's x and y, whatever it happens to be, if it's a bullet or an enemy or whatever it is less than the sum of the radii. So object.size divided by 2 plus size divided by 2. This being, it's going to be our bullet when we call it from the perspective of the enemy, but whatever the offending object that we're inspecting. This will be our own size. So, if the distance between the object and itself is less than the sum of the two radii of that object and this object, then we'll return true, else return false. And technically, we don't have to write it like this. This is a fine way. If you like it, feel free to just ignore the next piece of advice. But technically, we could write this all in one line. We could just say, return that. Because this statement is true or false. And before, we were saying, if that's true, return true. Else, if it's false, return false. But now we're just going to return this, which is either true or false. So I'll leave it up to you to decide if you want to keep it as if else, or if you just want to return a Boolean statement like this. That's a fine way to do it. And I guess I don't need these parentheses then. So this will basically just be like, hey, we are or we aren't colliding with a particular object. So now an enemy can ask, and anything can ask, are we colliding with an object? If we are, well, our lives should be reduced by 1. And we could also kill the offending object. I think I'll leave it for now. I think I will change that later, but we'll just put it in. It'll just the bullet will just get to keep moving and just destroy things. So it'll carve a swath. So let's see how this works. So you can see it's definitely colliding with things and pushing them off. Now we have a problem. You can see that we're spiking in terms of number of things on the screen. We're almost at 1,000, and yeah, we hit 1,000. Our enemies aren't dying. So I mean, they're dying when we shoot them, but they're not. If they go off screen, they aren't, and that's gonna start getting rather tedious because there's gonna be so many things checking for collisions and so on. So I'd like to change it. Kind of looks like a bunch of post-it notes falling from the sky. I'm battling against memos or something, which I'm down with. Paperwork sucks. I hate paperwork. So let's go and change those things. So first of all, I'd like to make sure it dies when it goes off the screen. So I can say, if this is in the act function of the enemy, I could just remove if goes off screen. And, we do have that off-screen code, don't we? We have, no, that's not it. I guess the star just checks to see if it's off the bottom of the screen. But a bullet, I have check if it goes off the screen. I kind of like the idea of making that another function in GameObject. Instead of retyping this over and over again, I can make that a Boolean function. So in GameObject, I can say something like Boolean off screen, and I can just check to see if it is. So that question, I can just say return. Oh yeah. And it will evaluate this for me and return true or false if it's true, or if it's false, it'll return false. So instead of saying this, I've almost given that piece of code a nickname called off screen, and it can return that value for me. So in bullet, now I can say if off screen. And similarly in enemy, I can say if off screen. I will set lives to 0. So yeah, if the enemy goes off the screen, it's gone. Bye-bye. All right, let's see. Oh, I forgot. I guess they start off screen, hey? Wah, wah. That's too bad. So maybe having a global sort of off screen, maybe it's not the best. Or I could just, make it so that in my game object, maybe I could just, instead of less than 0, maybe I could make it less than, maybe 50. I'll have a little staging area at the top there, 50 pixels, so they can like survive. No, didn't work. If less than -50, greater than width. Oh, that's X. Sorry about that. Let's put that Y as less than -50. Yeah, so we'll have a staging area at the top. So now, even if I have a whole bunch of enemies, like I think I should top out now. I'm not sure what that number will be. Looks like it's around 470, 480. Yeah, around 480. And that means I am, holding strong at a certain amount. All right, so now you're looking good, I guess now I probably want to like make it so that maybe the bullet doesn't penetrate through all of them. So I'll say object.lives. So swinging back to our collision code, if we have a collision with a bullet we find a bullet and we're colliding with it, then we are going to reduce our lives by 1 and we'll kill off the bullet. So object.lives, this being the bullet, equals 0. Let's see. So yeah, it looks like I can only shoot one thing now, which makes this game incredibly difficult and gonna be annoying. So then we have to sort of release or reduce the speed at which the enemies are coming, but we're gonna create like a little class that will be something that will produce enemies. It'll kind of lay out our enemies in different patterns, and I think it'll be really fun to design the waves of enemies that come. And so we'll make a little class that will put our enemies into positions, into certain patterns, and see what we can do. So that'll be for our next video. So thanks so much for watching. I hope everything's making sense, and if not, then I'll answer your questions as soon as I can. Okay, thanks everybody.